Welcome back to At Home with Stacy Encourage. I got my hands on some Roma tomatoes. These are seconds, so they are a bit dirty. Now that it's nice and clean, we are going to score these tomatoes by simply putting an X or just cutting them at the bottom of the tomatoes. And we are going to blanch these by simply adding them to some hot boiling water for 30 seconds. Once it's been there for 30 seconds, you want to add it to an ice water bath immediately to stop the process of cooking. And as you can see, the skin comes off beautifully and easy. Very important. By just simply cutting that line under there, it makes it effortless to remove the skin. After you have removed the skin from the tomatoes, go ahead and remove any blemish that might be on the tomato, any rotten pieces, any holes, any insect bite. Remove anything that could cause possible spoilage once you can these. This was the easiest process for me. This is 20 pounds of tomatoes. Coring them, on the other hand, and removing the seed was the more tedious process. It was really time consuming. And I went ahead and I core this and I removed the seed. Now would be the time to take your clean jars and add them to your water bath if you're using a water bath method, or your pressure canning if you're using a pressure can method. That way everything is nice and hot when you are ready for them. And we are going to be juicing the skin of the tomatoes as well as the core of the tomatoes that we removed earlier. And this is the liquid that we're going to use to can our half of tomatoes in. So you want to go ahead and make sure that this is juiced really well. And you're going to pass this through the juicer several times. As you juice that, add it to a pot so that way you can heat this up on the stove, because we are going to be using a hot liquid, hot jars in our tomato halves. Nothing went to waste during this process. I kept adding the core and the skin of my tomatoes back into the juicer until it was completely juice free. And that made me so happy. And of course, it was the most richest and creamiest tomato juice. I find this method is better than using water. And I'm going over this as much as I can. I think I went over this about 5 or 6 times. Now you're going to take those hot jars and add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to each jar. Lemon juice helps with the preservation process. Okay, and I'm using Goya lemon juice. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of salt. And now I am adding my tomato halves to each jar. Of course, we want about a 1-inch headspace left. And this is how simple this process is. I am using, I believe these are pint size jar. No, actually quart size jar, sorry. And I'm also adding some basil from my garden. This is optional. You can go ahead and add whatever spices you like. I had a lot of basil in my garden, so I went ahead and I used some of that basil. And this is my delicious, I didn't taste it, but this is my fresh juice tomatoes that I have on the stove heating up, and I'm adding them to the jar. And of course, I am leaving about a 1-inch headspace. The jars that are too full, you're going to go ahead and just remove some of that liquid. If maybe you add too much tomato halves, you can remove those and just, adjust it to your likeness. But this is how simple, to me, this was the simplest process. As I mentioned, the most difficult process was the coin process. And I didn't mention, remember to put your hot jars on a towel. Very important, because they will crack if the counter is too cold. Now is the time you want to remove any air bubbles that you may have. You don't want it to have air bubbles. And of course, you're going to take your paper towel or your cloth and you want to clean the rim of each jar. Now do this about 2 times. Make sure there is no debris. Make sure there is no tomatoes on there. And you're going to go ahead and take your hot lid and your rings, and you're going to finger tighten each jag. And I am using the pressure can method. So I went ahead and I pressure canned these for about 25 minutes. All right. Now you can also use a water bath for about 30 or more minutes. I'm not quite sure, but I know it could be like about 30 or more. And you can also water bath these as well. Right? And remember to place your jar once you remove them from your canner on a towel because they will crack. And there you have it. That was my canning tomato process. And this was again pretty easy for me, and I'm definitely going to do this again. I hope you enjoy. Do remember to subscribe, and thanks for watching.